Scarlett, good to have you with us as always. We're keen to sort of get the latest on what's going on, when it comes to American public opinion, with you, Scarlett, Sam, and Mikey, keen to, I think, pick your brains as well. But let me start by just asking you, what is the since that debate, and since so many other things have been going on, the row about Haitian migrants eating cats and dogs, which they're not in Springfield, Ohio, all these other things. What is the latest state of the polls? Is it coming through, and how is it looking?
I do think actually we can see a bit of the effect of Kamala Harris's performance, and Donald Trump's too, in the debate last week, starting to filter through into the polls, which of course was a lot of where the sort of amplification of those claims about Haitian migrants came from. We're actually starting to see, even though it's still an incredibly close race, we're starting to see the momentum a little bit more with Kamala Harris. We actually had it with Trump before the debate. We had a race that was 55% in Trump's favor. Now we think it's back to 50-50, but with some really key underlying trends in Kamala Harris's favor. So if it keeps going like it is, and it looks like it's hers to win, hers to lose rather, but we'll see, it's still too tight to say.
Yeah, well, so interesting movement. And when you say, I don't know, signs just below the surface there of movement, which might be encouraging to the Harris camp, what are you thinking? What are you talking about?
Yeah, so we've seen that she's doing very well consolidating parts of the Democrat base, and she's also doing very well with Hispanic voters and starting to make inroads again with black voters. So Biden was struggling. Obviously, he was still ahead, or not obviously, but he was still ahead with black voters compared to the Republicans, but still nowhere compared to his 2020 watermark. Same is true with Hispanic voters, and we've actually seen that, especially in the last week, Kamala Harris has been able to consolidate that, especially then combined with the fact that she's making very good progress with younger women as well, and starting to make good progress with independents too. So you're just seeing all these different groups starting to come around. A lot can change, but at the moment they're going in the right direction for her.
All these key demographics. And when it comes to women, there's a really marked gap between the red and the blue side on that, as you say. And Latino voters, that's going to be important in swing states like Arizona in particular. And African-American voters. I mean, Trump has been so proud of getting the numbers that he has among African-Americans in the United States of America. And now we see this row about, Scarlett, about Springfield, Ohio, with Donald Trump and before him J.D. Vance, his running mate, not just saying, but doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on the idea of Haitian migrants eating people's cats and dogs against all the evidence. I mean, how's that? Is there any evidence, Scarlett, of how that's going down with African-American voters, say?
Well, we don't have that with specifically, but it may well be at least part of the reason why they're starting to move more in Kamala Harris's favor is in the week-on-week increase that we have been seeing. But I do think it reminds voters of something really crucial. So Donald Trump's campaign is at its strongest when it is disciplined and when it is talking very much onto the messages that he wants to talk about and to the policy issues. So economy and immigration, you might say, okay, well, this is amplifying the issue of immigration and making sure it's all that's being talked about wall to wall. But it's doing something else, this conversation as well. And I think that's reminding people of some of the more controversial aspects of Trump and his personality and some of the chaos and the messiness that surround him and surround the day-to-day sort of comms. And actually, that's exactly the last thing he wants to be reminding American voters of, especially these swing voters who we know have sort of had enough of that and they want to turn the page. We will see whether that keeps going. But at the moment, I think it's very counterproductive for what he wants to do.
Yeah, Sam and Mike are here. Sam.
Yeah, hi Scarlett, it's Sam Lister from The Express here. This might be a step too far in terms of polling, but is there any evidence about whether voters believe these claims about cats and dogs? And also, if they don't believe them, do they care? Does it matter? Does it change how they think about him? Or is it just kind of one of those baked-in issues where they don't believe him, but they don't care?
Well, that's actually a perfect story because we've had a poll out today that was addressing just exactly that question. So we did find actually that more than a third of voters say they believed the claims, which is quite staggering. We found that. But I think the thing is, if they believe them, that's one thing. I think a lot of the ones that believe him, he's just talking to the people who are going to turn out and vote for him anyway, and not thinking about this middle ground who I think it will be actively putting off. We did find it, though. We were quite surprised that as many as 1 in 3 thought they were true.
Yeah, but it's a mark of the deep polarization in the voting population there, and that fascinating country, Mikey.
Well, I was just going to ask, when I think back to 2020 when obviously Trump lost, one of the things that I remember from that was that there was a great sense that everyone was exhausted by, as you were saying, the chaos of it all. Waking up every morning to find out what he'd done now. And I wonder if that is something that people still remember, or has the memory of that faded over time, do you think?
I think that's one of the crucial questions to this whole campaign, and it's something that we track quite carefully because we think it's a very important driver of how people might vote. So that when we saw this, it was interesting. In the first half of this year, Trump was doing very well on this front. We asked, what do you remember of a Trump presidency? And people were saying a better economy, a stronger economy. That was their abiding memory of the Trump government. So it wasn't the chaos, it wasn't the messiness. And you have things like January 6th, way, way, way down there. What we've seen, especially in this latest post-debate poll, is that memories of Jan 6th are now almost overtaking again that memory of a strong economy, which to me, I think, speaks to your point there, which is that this memory of exhaustion and chaos and of it all just being a bit too much drama, I think is starting to come back into voters' minds, and that is bad news for Trump.
That's an extraordinary finding. I blink slightly when you say that, Scarlett, that the issue of January the 6th and the riot in the Capitol and so on, Donald Trump accused of inciting that. And again, we're now getting this argument about he accuses the Democrats of inciting the assassination attempt against him. They say, quite right to call him a threat to democracy. Look at January the 6th. But in voters' minds, that's bigger than the economy. What about the old dictum? It's the economy stupid. So apparently it's January the 6th stupid.
Well, exactly. So they're not saying it's their priority. It still comes down a very long way with priorities, or at least if you say, is that defending democracy, which obviously means quite different things to Republicans and to Democrats when you poll them on it, which is why it's not a sort of perfect question. But no, on this, it was just their memories. It was their strongest memory. And so it was brilliant news for Trump in the first half of this year if people's abiding memory of his time in office was the economy. But now it's looking like it's increasingly January 6th again, which is exactly what he wants to put behind him. But you're absolutely right. I think it's the economy, or rather, I should say, the cost of living, that is the most important issue for voters. It's how they feel personally, financially, that tends to determine how they vote.
And not strictly a polling question, Scarlett, but more discussion. It's never gone away, but more and more discussion about how finely balanced this election still is, how deeply divided America is, the question about violence in American politics, and now if the election on November the 5th turns out to be inconclusive or deeply disputed, whatever happens, it's going to be deeply disputed. Are we going to be looking at some really serious violence? There's a piece in the Times today talking about a Michigan voter saying, I'm ready to get my gun out in defense of Donald Trump. I mean, the Civil War phrase is being used. Is that now more than ever becoming back into the mainstream conversation? It's a scary thought, but is it, Scarlett?
Yeah, well, I'm going to try not upset anyone around me in this DC cafe, but it is quite extraordinary when you're here because everything is dialed up. It's not like anything, as I'm sure you know, John. You've covered it a lot and you've been here. But about the UK politics, everything is dialed up to 11, and that's something we're seeing. And I think actually, especially after in the wake of these multiple assassination attempts on Donald Trump, I think it does make you worry that temperature is sort of being boiled even further, and it does make you think as well about what could happen after the election. I think we'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of work going into that. But it's definitely, I think, something that's worrying an awful lot of people.
There's a natural reticence to go there in sort of casual conversation, Sam and Mikey, isn't there? Not that what we say here is going to have a great deal of bearing on anything that happens there, but you always sort of worry when you have a discussion like this. Is talking about it going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy? Are we making it more likely? It's something you really don't want to contemplate. Certainly not. It's not a conversation we have here, mercifully, to anything remotely like the same degree. But in America, so much more acute, sharp, painful an issue.
Yeah, and absolutely. But also, I wondered, and I don't know if, Scarlett, you are able to help on this, or maybe it's a bit too soon, but there has been this second apparent assassination attempt, which seems to have almost gone without much remark, really. And I wonder, is that something that figures large in people's minds over there, or is it just become almost a bit, fine, here's another one, and there'll probably be another one along in the next month? Is it having any influence?
It's a good question. It is being met with a bit of a shrug, actually. I think both in terms of media coverage, and I think that's right. People have got used to them, used to assassination attempts on American presidents in general, and now with Donald Trump in particular. I think partly because it didn't come with the same sort of compelling imagery that the first one did. You know, those images that were all over every paper of him sort of fist bumped in the air. We didn't have anything like that this time, so it wasn't as visually dramatic for people to cotton on to. But no, there has been a sense that it's not being left as much impact now. The Republicans are trying to change that. Republicans are trying to say this is because of the of Democrats' rhetoric and for inciting violence on their part. But no, it doesn't seem to be moving things. And actually, I think one of the frustrations is we couldn't even really tell how much effect the last assassination attempt had, because then Biden resigned, so stood down as a nominee rather than not resigned so quickly after. And that's part of the thing about this election, which has been so extraordinary, is these events, which are crazy, about Biden handing over to Kamala Harris an assassination attempt on Trump's side. We're getting too used to them.